dress more casually for these meetings.
Good evening, Lauren. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Oh, and we can see you.
Yes, joining on 2 laptops though, but
Hey, Ira, how you doing, man? I'm great. Hey.
We only have 2. Well, we said 5:35 for the start, right?
That's true, because 5 o'clock starts the meeting and then
We don't
start
have
till
to.
5:35. So, but we don't have a quorum for planning commission.
But we have about 7 minutes. Actually, 2 minutes. We'll do the pledge of allegiance, but we have until 5:35 according to our agenda to open the plant.
And I guess technical question for you, Lauren, because I think this happened once years ago
wasn't a quorum for planning commission, but I thought the council then still took action. There just wasn't a recommendation from planning commission. Is that an option?
I don't believe so, since it's been noticed as a joint hearing with action taken by the planning commission for the recommendation. A city attorney might know more on a way to have the council, call it up instead of having the planning commission hear it. But at this point, during a hearing, I'm not sure how that would be done.
Interestingly enough, he's not.
Yeah, our city attorney's not here yet either, so.
Okay.
And for the record, we sent out reminders.
At 5:35, then if we don't have a quorum, dismiss everyone but planning commissioner Dirks have to stay so that we have a in order to adopt the URA budget.
I mean, 5:40 maybe, maybe. Because I know Commissioner Zabrowski said he would be here.
All right.
Coming from across town, but it's midtown.
Still, that light.
Well, he would probably walk.
Talking half a mile.
The neighbor,
All right, well, it is 5:30, so we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
with liberty and justice for all.
As Greg mentioned, we'll go ahead and wait until about 5:40 to see if we get a quorum of the planning commission. So,
And in the meantime, just a quick reminder, when you do speak, just try to get as close to the microphone as possible. It really helps the Metro East folks out. So while you can be a little back and still hear in here, the transfer from the system to that one, there's a little volume difference. And we do have Commissioner Zabrowski.
he's
We have a quorum.
zooming in. Yep,
How you doing?
good. Commissioner, thank you for coming.
Yeah, you allowed us to have a quorum, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's been a rough day. I've just found out my wife broke her humerus the other day in the mountains. So, yeah, things are kind of tough.
All right, so Lauren, we have a quorum, so I think we should probably just go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Okay, will do. Let me share my screen.
Oh, and it is a planning commission meeting. So Stanley, since you're the senior member present, you're in charge.
And is that screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So good evening, commissioners. My name is Lauren Scott, and I will be doing the staff presentation on this item tonight. This is a legislative amendment updating the city's zoning and development code intended to bring the city into compliance with the requirements of House Bill 2001, which focuses on enabling so-called middle housing within more areas of Oregon. Middle housing is the type of housing that falls between single-family detached housing and multifamily apartments with 5 or more units. HB 2001 requires cities to allow middle housing in zones where single-family detached dwellings are permitted. And as Wood Village is a city within Metro, it's technically considered under the large city umbrella, and it must allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters in those residential zones. And this slide just shows the different types of middle housing as defined under HB 2001. Duplexes were already mentioned under Wood Village's code, as were attached houses or townhouses. Cottage housing was also previously allowed, but the development standards were not consistent with the HB 2001 definition or requirements for what they're calling cottage clusters. And triplexes and quadplexes were not identified under the existing code. Middle housing does not include tiny homes, RVs, or mobile homes, and HB 2001 does not speak to the development or siting of those. In terms of compliance, the bill offered several options cities Cities can adopt the minimum standards in the Oregon Administrative Rules, adopt the Middle Housing Model Code developed by the state, or a combination of the above. Large cities, which Wood Village is considered, must have standards adopted by June 30th, 2022. Wood Village did choose to meet the minimum requirements in the OARs and adopt some of the aspects of the Middle Housing Model Code in terms of clear and objective design standards. And this amendment affects the light residential and multi-residential zones where single-family detached dwellings are currently permitted. And this is a lot of text on this slide, but this just shows a summary of the changes that were made. Updates, of course, were made to the light residential and multi-residential zones to allow those middle housing types. And since HB 2001 also addresses the maximum number of parking spaces a city can require for middle housing, that section of the code was updated as well, as was the definitions section. And code amendments are processed in accordance with the legislative procedure. Notices were sent to DLCD and posted. And I'll briefly step through each of the review criteria that were included in detail in the staff report, which include consistency with the comprehensive plan, zoning code, and effects to transportation facilities and systems. These amendments do encourage redevelopment of underutilized lands and increase the variety of housing choices allowed to help meet housing needs for Wood Village residents. And it is, of course, consistent with the broader state and metro housing efforts and requirements, further upholding the city's economic, housing, and urbanization policies. In terms of consistency with the zoning code, the ultimate intent of the amendments are to bring Wood Village's development code in compliance with the requirements of HB 2001 and allow for more housing options. But this amendment does not require rezoning or redesignation of low-density residential properties, and the amendments do allow for flexibility in the design and development of middle housing. In terms of affecting transportation facilities or systems, since this is a legislative requirement, local governments are not required to consider whether the amendment would significantly affect an existing or planned transportation facility. And as outlined in the staff report, the amendments are consistent with the statewide planning goals, specifically further upholding land use, economic development, and housing goals. And it's consistent with the Metro Functional Plan as well, specifically Titles 1 and 7. And it does not conflict with the other requirements for natural resources or employment lands. For public and agency comments, DLCD did review and comment on the amendment package. They had a few minor recommended revisions and some clarifying questions. Those edits were made and DLCD responded that they were satisfied with those changes, and that version is the one included in your packet. There were also 2 public comments, one of which was from the Fair Housing Council, and those additional Goal 10 findings were prepared and distributed yesterday. And on this slide is the staff recommendation for the Planning Commission. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the amendment package to the City Council. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any commissioner questions at this point.
Guess I'll open the floor. Linda, you have any questions?
Not,
Steve, you there?
I'm here. I have no questions.
Okay. I guess at this point, I guess we'll close the comments and ask for a motion. Okay, you got
make
it?
a motion.
I got it here.
Got it there. I don't have
Yeah, I
anything
did,
in
yeah.
front of me.
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the zoning and development code amendment case file ZDC 22-01 and adopts ordinance 2-2022. Is that a second?
I second.
Any further comments?
No.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes and the meeting is closed.
Aye.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks.
Very
Thank you, Lauren.
effective.
And
Thank you all.
everyone is
Planning Commission.
welcome to
Just
stay,
in time.
but nobody ever does. So next up then, adoption, for the Urban Renewal Agency.
You do have to wait till 5:45 since that was the advertised time.
Okay. All right. So we're ahead of schedule, but bound to wait because that was the time that we noticed. Yeah, 5:45 was the notice time. So yeah, we're on a little bit of a break.
I just brought the motions with
Bruce.
me. Extra one.
Oh.
There you go.
I'm here.
You could have taken that one. Is this my?
I played the dog. Woke me up. I was out. I was out. Work at some. Oh, wait, can't be. Oh, no.
Early meeting. Yep. Since you're the. I have aortic stenosis on and heart failure, infection controlled heart failure. My arm fell to my side and I could. It wasn't slurred. I just. Yeah, and blurred. Felt like this side. Feel really sharp pain in my.
I would highly recommend it. Right now.
Didn't have a quorum. Yeah, we wouldn't have a quorum until we swore. Come as long as I didn't have a stroke.
No, I mean, I think it's,
I'm gonna hang out, but.
Yeah, I would
have an idea, throw it out there. If it's not
further
this, we'll
attention.
try it somewhere else. But
Only lasted about a minute. Guy that I was trying to talk to just
I'm willing to
kept
support.
talking, and so it really didn't. Right.
You know what?
I couldn't talk, and I was looking for a pen and paper to try to write down that I was having a stroke, so that
Fine break.
helped me.
Take the survey though.
But
I will.
but it just passed, and
I mean, I guess technically I should do an extra interview.
for sure,
Technically.
for sure. Opportunity and an environment that.
That's why we're waiting.
Well, I just got my.
We wanted.
Reading emails. It's like ketchup here.
Working, we're creating.
Live and in person. No, he did that to me this morning. Presentation. One here. So we pulled the. Council meeting in a long time.
Yeah.
You should have them testify, just, you know.
Oh, I'm sure they'd be happy to.
yeah. Come up here and
Well,
ask us what
I
the
guess,
heck we were
I guess I could, pull my seat and offer it up to somebody else and you could have somebody else next, swear in another counselor next
I think it works
Meeting
that
and-
way.
and have another big crowd.
Oh, how is the car situation? It seemed like it's hit or miss some days.
It is getting better.
That's what it seemed like, but then it's a lot of them are back.
Yeah, a couple days ago, I made pretty good progress, and then I think it was this morning. Today, it looked like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, and that's what it seemed like, but you're there.
But it is, we are averaging on the better side than,
That's what it seemed like. I wanted to check
yeah.
your take on it.
Gotta figure out how to.
One parked on the east side
Tricky.
today.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, right by the stop sign. I'm like, what?
and on the west side, they park right under,
No, I saw
right
that
under
one.
the stop
Saw
sign.
that one, but then I had to go through Birch and I. Really?
Mm-hmm.
You could cite them for that
They're-
because you
they're
can't
gonna
park
allow
more than
for-
50, within 15 feet of a stop sign.
It's,
No, I mean, no.
we're working with chief. Things squared away with the parked vehicles.
Nothing we're not-
Rumor, I heard one of their mailing addresses
That
is
night.
already Carib, state of Oregon.
Knowing anyone that we see kind of.
Learn to build furniture maybe.
Because it's just kind of that time of year too.
Or at least temporarily,
Some of them
their
don't, some of them
address
do.
was 24499 South.
I know they're coming out.
Road.
That's what we
Carib
mostly
Coffee
get.
Creek Extensional Facility.
Wow.
Now that
I know I need to talk to her and finish.
I think I wrote that I know that address.
Yeah, quite quickly. Oh, the,
For
Well,
the
it's not
events.
because of
Yeah,
the
so-
mailing address.
We'll be hoping.
They get.
Yeah, that's right. That's why.
Kind of.
So it's 5:45 now and we have Seth in the hot seat, so we will go ahead and open the URA meeting to adopt the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, board members. So as you recall, we were here a scant 5 weeks ago on April 19th to go through the Urban Renewal Agency proposed budget. It was approved by the Urban Renewal Agency. Kind of.
That's
which
actually
I
quite fitting.
You got to play your walk-up music before you walk up.
Sorry, there's kind of a rough crowd back there.
Sometimes I hear that when I walk in a room. Does. So the Urban Renewal Budget Committee approved for adoption. This was published last Wednesday and it was and also on our website. As you know, the Urban Renewal Agency covers part of the city. Total authorized limit is 11. Did an amendment in 2019. We did a bond sale in 2020 and executed an IGA. Wood Village, who took out the loan on our behalf. Urban Renewal Agency has to pay back that money. So performance, these are some graphics that we talked about as part of the proposed. See where we are, ramp up the payments for those bonds this year. Revenues from the byway have started coming in. In terms of what's changed since it was proposed. So there were no changes that the Budget Committee made between what was proposed, what was approved by the committee. Since then, we did make a revision between the approved and the adopted that we're presenting here tonight. Change was that we were anticipating, or we had for a potential purchase of a property within the Urban Renewal Agency. Within the Urban Renewal Agency, and had planned on then selling that same year. So direction from the Urban Renewal Agency Board was to not go forward with that. So the change is that we didn't purchase it. So the money's still sitting in our accounts. We took it from a sale of asset and moved it to our beginning fund balance for next year. And the only other change was anything that was left over we needed to balance got put into contingency. So that's the only change that's been made in the entire process. This graph hasn't changed much from last year. A lot of operations. We have some capital outlay plugged in case we find a project to spend the remainder of the bond money on. As you guys know, we have about $300,000 left after the street crossings. And we've talked to the board about ideas for potential improvements along Halsey as part of the work of Main Streets on Halsey, and looking at other options that will hopefully be forward to you in the fiscal year. Debt service. So street crossings in here, and that's under special payments. We also left in some development incentives in case someone approaches us, buys the Vista View property, wants to approach the board about some sort of development agreement. We just have some funding available for that in the next fiscal year. The debt service, the original general fund loan that's been financing the urban rural agency is $120,000. And we're in the second year of our repayment of those 2020 full faith and credit bonds. We owe just under $500,000 this year. So in summary, that bond issue allowed us to take a number of very significant projects: the Arata Road fence, the development incentives for the byway project, the Halsey Street crossings, and all of those. Now we've kind of locked our revenues up for the next 2 to 4 years, absent any other developer or someone coming in with a large project. We still have fund balance of around $1 million projected for the end of this fiscal year. So there still is some ability to do something, but we've locked up a lot of our ongoing revenue in those bonds, unless we get some new development, wait for the bonds to taper off or refinance. So some smaller projects we might be looking at, like I said, for junction with the work going on along the Halsey corridor. Longer term, very healthy. The byway coming on to the urban agency is driving our revenues and will allow us to complete the district by 2031 or 2032, which is what we had stated when the district was formed. With that, there's a couple of required resolutions that were in your packet. I'm more than willing to take any questions on anything in the presentation or anything related to the adoption.
Anybody have any questions or comments at all for Seth? I'd entertain the first motion, resolution URA 2-2022.
I move to adopt resolution URA 2-2022, adopting the Wood Village Urban Renewal District budget for fiscal year 2022/2023 and making appropriations.
Second motion.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd entertain the second motion.
I move to adopt resolution URA 3-2022, certifying to the county assessor a request for the maximum amount of revenue that can be raised by dividing the taxes that provided by Oregon Constitution, Oregon Statutes 457. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have an adopted budget for the URA agency.
Excellent.
Thank you all for your time and efforts this budget season.
And the URA members are welcome to stay or go. It's totally up to you. It's a special night, though. You might want to stay. All right. So then we will open the regular city council meeting for tonight, and we will open it in the way that we always do with the reading of our land acknowledgement statement. The Chinookan peoples, known as the Clackamas and Cascades, are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and the fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. And we are honored to be guests upon these lands. Thank you. And now we have the swearing in of our brand new city councilor.
All of are your guests here that you're aware of?
Sorry.
Okay.
We did this outside, so.
All right. So it is my honor to administer this oath for you. And without further ado, please raise your hand. Date
As amended.
and will perform my
Congratulations.
Photos and balloons.
On your certificates back.
As long as we're not.
Maybe we shouldn't.
Okay, should. I'll go with that. Oh, I closed my eyes. Better take another one. Well, you've already missed the two exciting ones. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were almost in a conundrum. We. Here. But luckily we got a quorum, so it was a non.
You can always call me, you know.
I guess what would the answer? Council cannot act.
Right. The immutable law. Hard for me to tell. I just double up. Em went around a few minutes ago. He changed a bunch of name tags. Troublemaker right next to. You are next to me.
All right, well, welcome to council, Councilor Min. And we will open the floor now for public comment on non-agenda items. Testimony at all.
We did not receive any electronic test.
So we'll close.
The guests here are otherwise,
Yeah, that's right. Their testimony was in the pictures. All right, and then we will move on to then our for the fiscal year 22-23 city budget.
Council, Mayor. For you tonight is the adoption of the City of Wood Village budget for fiscal year 22-23. So significant features, no changes in the number of authorized personnel. All of our operating funds have revenues, operating revenues in excess of expenditures. We have multi-year budget reserve appropriations for equipment as well as new this year for this building that we're sitting in. Major decisions, we are paying down future PERS cost and engaging started this summer and fall. Significant features of the budget, and those were all covered as part of your August 19th proposed budget and approved committee hearing. Here are the summary for all of the funds. As you can see, municipal building fund wound down.
You said August 19th.
April.
Those A months. We met April 19th. Thank you. Most of the major funds are general fund, street fund, water and sewer are increasing. The SDC, we did create the new Parks SDC fund as part of a supplemental budget that was also held on April 19th. And the internal service fund, this is one that we've always included in the budget. We had just never appropriated, received a finding from the auditor. Please appropriate this. And so we did. So most of that change between the 2 years is putting in the internal service funds and the increase in our system development charge funds, as well as the drop off in the municipal building fund expenditures. So city manager proposed the budget to the committee. The committee approved these 4 changes to the budget. There's the PERS site account, which is paying down future PERS costs, helping to preserve our operating ability to operate in the black. Mayor and committee and council expenses, we added $6,000 for community engagement. So those are food, could be food, could be additional outreach, could be childcare, whatever we need to do in order to make sure that the meetings are going to be well attended, or there's not going to be barriers to attendance that are financial. We also added some community grants of $5,000 to help grassroots community events with some seed money to get them up and running. Again, just trying to foster more involvement from the community using this facility and all of the facilities that the city has. Then we had a very lengthy discussion about Christmas trees, and that got added as well.
Quick question, are we still gonna continue with the Christmas tree even though the planter of said Christmas tree seedling idea is abandoning or jumping ship?
You're correct with abandoning, full abandonment.
The blade.
The second June meeting, we'll have an agenda item just on this discussion piece of what does that look like for you? So again, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it. But we do want to have that discussion of what does the tree event look like?
For those watching on for the first time, we have nothing against Christmas trees. Just maybe this particular $33,000 one. There might be other options, but there will be a Christmas tree.
Christmas is canceled.
Just because M's leaving doesn't mean we can't.
Palm Christmas tree, California.
It might turn into a palm tree. All right, so that was the changes that were made at your April 19th meeting from city manager proposed to the budget committee adopt or approved. So we're now in the adoption phase. We have some proposed changes from when we last saw you that were published as part of the noticing that was required. So first of all, 2 capital projects. John's working with our vendor to try and get smart meters delivered. We're not sure if they're going to get here by June 30th, but we wanted to preserve the batch that we were going to order for next year as well as this year, rather than let that appropriation lapse. And if it comes in July and we get it, then we couldn't place an order for another 54 smart meters. So in total, over the 2 years, we would purchase 108. It's just fiscal years. Similarly, you get council approved as part of the 21-22 budget, some refurbishment for our ops building, staff areas and work areas. We had purchased some equipment under that, but John's been working with the contractor and I believe we've moved on to a new contractor. So
And we do have a signed contract, but we're end of May and it's just one of those, we're only going to spend the money once, but we don't know if it'll be fully finished by the end of the fiscal year versus July time. So it's still the one remodel.
yeah. There is a new appropriation as part of, and that is additional money for SCADA capital improvements and programming work. This allows for some flexibility in how we are managing both the water and sewer monitoring systems, and hopefully we'll get some good information coming out of the master planning process. We wanted to make sure that the appropriation was there if we needed additional service. So that's how that one came up. So those ones were all published and were included in your packet. This is what those look like, just in terms of where the money is coming from and going. And I'll pause here for a minute to see if you guys have any questions about what was included as part of the materials that we published and distributed. All right, hearing silent as a church. On. So just to recap, here's kind of the operating budget. Again, most of our expenditures is in personnel and materials and services. And the reason why materials and services is large is we contract out with our partners for police services, fire services, planning services, building inspections, and a host of other services that can be provided more efficiently and cost effectively in partnership. And then we're also highlighting our net operating margin across all of our operating funds. So that's just a recap. And again, we covered all of this at our April 19th meeting. We just wanted to recap kind of the overall picture. With that, there are 2 additional items that weren't included in the published. So these would have, if you guys approve these or want these to be included, they would have to be added and approved as modified. So the first is, again, a rollover carry forward for our pickup truck. We got the de-icer, deglazer snowplow delivered and have purchased that. The truck, we're still waiting on delivery of the truck, and this may or may not show up before June 30th, with may not being the more likely.
It won't. We
will not.
ordered everything in September of 21, and the order will go in by August of 22.
Is it, when you and I have had discussions, you said it was North Side?
It's
Ford?
North Side Ford,
So
yeah.
but the staff report says Gresham
Oh.
Ford. We can let Gresham Ford off the hook.
Yeah, it's North Side Ford, and honestly, I don't think it's one dealer or another being better or worse. I think it goes in batches at Ford corporate, and we don't know how that black box works, but their fleet manager has been very good, at least giving us update about every month and a half, and just says not ordered yet. Then we did hear will be ordered by August, because if it's not, it changes the model year and everything else. So they said it will be by August. So we didn't want to ask, what if it's not?
So ordered by August, will it be delivered by June 30th of next year?
They didn't specify that, but the cost is still the same. And that
Okay.
was important because this is near a year ago now.
Right.
Cost will not change. And that's for the vehicle plus the accessories that we ordered with it will still be the same as we ordered.
Okay.
And I'll provide updates for you in my monthly report. Baby steps.
Yeah, in the meantime, we're just gonna need volunteers to push the plow.
Yeah.
And that was my error. John and Greg told me which dealer it was. When I hear that things aren't going well, I just put that adjective in front of whatever's not working.
So you substitute Gresham for other dirty
In the
words.
G word, yeah.
Yeah. So the second proposed change, with them leaving, everyone is rightfully sad. I let her know that at least for the next 6 months, everything that goes wrong is going to be blamed squarely on her. And that's just part of leaving. So council had given some feedback about looking at trying to add a position that was not included in the proposed budget because we're struggling to figure out how that could fit into existing staff. With Em leaving, since her position has so much kind of built in, it's an opportunity to reevaluate job duties, whether or not it fits with. We hope that we have a dream candidate that applies and that is every bit as good as Em, just a little worse, so that we don't get too used to excellence. But the reality is that we know that the job market has not improved since she came on. It's actually gotten markedly worse. The candidate.
So we can
pool-
blame you for the job market too.
Yes.
Now.
So with that, we've been having some conversations, not sure entirely what that would look like, but took a look at a couple of different ideas, and making this change would allow some flexibility based on how that recruitment goes and what comes out of the community engagement survey, if we need to add things and shift some responsibilities around within existing staff. Because one of the things we know is that we have some really great staff, and the reality is if we can't find someone great to bring in, then maybe it makes more sense to ask for people that we have confidence in to do more than they're doing now, or to kind of have some stretch assignments or some additional responsibilities on their plate. So what this would do is would allow for us to make that change, with the caveat that depending on how the recruitment goes and the community engagement survey, any proposed changes would come back to council before we actually took any action. So this is kind of a big change, again, entirely because our assistant to the city manager is leaving. Otherwise, it would have been incorporated in the budget that we were preparing in March. But it was also a good exercise in that, back when we were having the conversations in March, it's like, no, why would we need that? Everything's fine. And then 2 months later, a lot can change. So we want to make sure that we have flexibility moving forward to determine what that best path is, to have the funding available to do that.
The bottom of the scale is like 61 and change, and the top is in the 80s. Where the modification is only 60,000. Covering enough, given that if we get a really wonderful person, we might be hiring them on in the middle of the steps.
So the way this is kind of structured is, let's just say if we can find a replacement for M, they would just fit in that existing wage scale, and we'd still probably take a look at internal reorganizations and things that may just look a little different structurally financially. If we can't find a replacement for M and we continue forward with this shifting of duties and, restructuring, this money in water, sewer, streets is actually just the bucket the money comes from, because there would be a savings out of the general fund side to actually cover other components. This is just the additional part of it. So if we don't hire an M and things are redistributed, hiring, a new person, but maybe lower level, the money's close, but the bucket it comes out of changes a little bit from where we do the restructure. So it's not just 60,000 for a new person, it's 60,000 within the savings of we've restructured this position, not restructured them. Spread things out otherwise with those existing funds.
And part of that exercise came out of, we have not changed our personnel allocations in probably 7 or 8 years. Kind of the portions of people that go to the different funding buckets. We pull timesheet information on a yearly basis to make sure that we're budgeting is in line with what we're doing. But the reality is that we haven't had a major structural change within the job duties and descriptions in that time. So it's made sense. If we are looking at that, we kind of took a look and said, if we were to start shuffling some of these things around and kind of redefining who does what where, could we fit that within the existing budget, or would some of that need to shift? And most probably some of this cost would end up shifting from the general fund to the utility. Number of changes we've talked about.
Again, this just allows for flexibility, and what we come up with over the next several months would go back before you know, for authorizing new positions or changing things on the wage scale. Those are things you do control. So we'd bring back, here is the plan, and kind of workshop that out prior to actually doing the change.
And we discussed this internally, but council always has the option of saying no to this request now, bring it back to us when you've got more concrete information, which is entirely fine. Doing this now means that we wouldn't have to do a major supplemental budget when we. That's really kind of you either make the adjustment as part of this process, or we bring you back something and have to do the notice and that.
You also have to assemble the rest of the budget.
Not for a supplemental
Not for
budget, that's
supplemental.
just in the adopted phase. And this falls within, this $50,000 falls within the scope of what council's able to adjust from what was presented to the budget, presented and approved to the budget. 10% of expenditures, and this is well, with $1 million funds, we're talking
Well
like
under, yeah.
2%. Questions, concerns, preferences on whether or not we would do this addition now, or you would want us to come back with something more defined and as part of a supplemental budget?
Doing it now.
The reality is, we were kind of joking. I've been here almost 4 years. I think we've been fully staffed for 5 or 6 months over the course of.
Yeah, total over that
Not
time.
at any one, but total. So, we could go do all this, do the supplemental budget, bring it back to you October. By April, chances are things aren't going to be the same. So, which is the hard part in the budget process. We're trying to plan for what we know, and unfortunately, time catches up with us and we don't know as much as we did.
I guess one question I have would structuring, we understand, why M's leaving, but is kind of to the mayor's point, is this enough to like retain folks because wage and living cost increase and things like that?
We believe so, because we've looked at a couple positions that, okay, they can take the next step, because we're not just looking for who's in the seat right now, but what makes sense, as best we can predict 5-10 years from now, and either trying to retain or recruiting if they so choose to leave. There's a few positions that we'd elevate, resort some tasks, and then I think 3 positions actually elevate, and then a brand new add position at say more of an entry level type that can handle some of the, I don't want to call them lower level functions because they're all essential functions, but they're functions that you can bring in someone at the beginning and nurture their career with the expectation that's probably going to roll over every few years, but they may fall in love with us and stay for 15. So at the moment for this current upcoming year, we feel this is sufficient to have enough room to play in that mix. versus then next fiscal year, looking at what inflation is going to do over the next, again, kind of 12 months. That may be to more the point of the question of what does our wage scale look like? Because we're also going to do a compensation analysis, this coming term. And I think that'll provide more guidance and direction, both in terms of actual payroll, benefits, that whole mix of things. And so I think we may see some things in the next budget cycle that address some of those more specific issues.
That will give us the ability, with the pay scale, if we do move some job abilities around, then we would have a fresh kind of, here's what we need to comp before we actually go out to pull comps. Which, again, we want to make sure that we're paying people appropriately for the work. That's the end of my presentation. I have a couple of different motions. Want to pause and see if there's any questions before we move to ayes and nays.
And just as another point, we were able to get with Councilor Amend last week and do an orientation just on budget. So not saying she's 100% on everything, but we were able to get with her. She took time out of her day to learn about the budget process and where we're at. So just so you all know what the staff work we did and her dedication to the service.
Back in January, we voted to accept state shared funds, and this is motion to put our hands on them, or?
It's a two-step. So there's the ordinance side of it, and then there's the actual then resolution part of it. The state requires both steps.
So then I would entertain a motion on resolution 12-2022.
I move to approve resolution 12-2022, certifying municipal services provided for the purpose of establishing eligibility for the receipt of state shared revenue for fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
So this is the next set of motions, and we've broken it into two parts, the first of which adopts the City of Wood Village budget, except for the general fund recreation services. And then a second motion that adopts just that portion of the.
And so we can have the first motion and vote, and then Councilor Rios Campos would recuse himself for the second one.
And with this first one, if you want to do the changes that Seth talked about, it needs to be as amended.
So then I would entertain a resolution on or a motion on resolution 13-2022 as amended.
I move to approve resolution 13-2022, adopting the City of Wood Village budget of fiscal year 2022-22 and making appropriation excluding general fund recreation services as amended.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. And then, so people know, the reason that Councilor Rios Campos is recusing himself for the next one is because he's an employee of the City of Fairview, and he's the director for the Play East Recreation Program. And we're now going to potentially approve the budget for that.
I recruit myself at this moment.
Would entertain a motion on resolution 13-2022.
I move to amend resolution 13-2022 to include appropriations for general fund recreation services for fiscal year 2022-23.
Motion. Second by default, but
I second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
And then the last piece is approving the trust to levy property taxes to fund.
Before we make this motion, I noticed in the URA and then now to talk about the rate. Didn't include the rate in either one.
Because the budget committee actually does
approves the rate. So the URA just authorizes the county assessor to collect whatever the tax.
The
maximum-
dividing of the taxes.
Maximum about amount of revenue for the dividing of the taxes. So there isn't a rate. It was 3.1262 for the approved.
Per thousand.
I'll make sure and go back and see. I copied it from last year. I'm not gonna lie. So I'll make sure and go back and see that we did it correctly. Do the adoption part. I believe it's correct, but I can double check. Yeah.
Right.
Out of jail.
Yeah. I would, certainly don't want to go again. I would entertain a motion on resolution 14-2022.
I move to approve resolution 14-2022 levying and categorizing ad valorem taxes for fiscal year 2022/2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Seth. And I put citizen comment on non-agenda items way out ahead in the budget there. So just like Seth with August, we all make mistakes. And then, so next up would then be to consider the consent calendar. Does anybody have any questions or issues with that calendar? I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent calendar is approved. Next up then is ordinance 2-2022 on House Bill 2001 with Greg.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. You've already seen this presentation. This is what Lauren, the contract planner, provided. I just want to call out a couple of things for those that may be tuning in. One, this does not include tiny homes or RVs. Some of the comments we heard from open houses or other comments was it seemed like we were trying to dupe people into automatically adding tiny homes or RVs. I just want to point out the thought behind that was House Bill 2001 is additional housing options or choices. So we thought this was a natural fit or companion, the separate effort looking at tiny homes and RVs. And I just want to make it expressly clear, they are two separate initiatives. Tiny homes and RVs are not required as part of House Bill 2001. I also want to point out where there it is, the two public comments. Again, the one was in your packet from a citizen. The other one was Fair Housing Council. All of those have been addressed. And then before you do adopt, open the public hearing, even though there's no one here, should open it. And that if you do want to adopt it tonight, you can do it in single motion with unanimous vote. Those are the only changes and things I want to bring up as part of this presentation. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend its adoption. And because we're May 26th, it would take effect prior to the deadline of June 30th. So this code would be the city's code in compliance with state mandates.
Question on the unanimous vote. On the budget votes, I didn't hear Councilor Amend say aye. And so I don't know if she was purposely abstaining because she's new, but if she were to abstain on this one and the three of us were to vote in favor, would that be a unanimous vote?
I'm looking at you, Jeff.
No, it would not.
Okay.
Encourage you if you feel good about it to vote in one way.
And again, Councilor Amend took time out of another day that her and I talked a lot about the planning efforts, including House Bill 2001, tiny homes and other council initiatives. So not sure she's had the 2 years of background like most of you have, but we were able to do the crash course the other week. This week, I think it was.
It's all mixed up. I feel informed. Thank you.
So I apologize for the error. Should I have opened the public meeting prior to you making the presentation? Or is opening it now?
You can open it now.
All right, then we will open the public meeting to consider ordinance 2-2022. Public, close the public meeting.
Actually, Mayor, it's public.
Public hearing, sorry.
It's correcting it.
Sorry. We'll close the public hearing. Well, yeah, you're right. We'll get. We'll go.
Already in the public.
Yeah, since we're here. All right, and I would entertain a motion on ordinance 2-2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This has been, like I said, years in the making. Glad to have this done, complete, and DLC did sign off on them. So they will be accepted by the state.
Next up is our Public Works Director's report with John.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. Welcome, Councilor Amend. Thank you. So I'm here to present the May 2022 Public Works monthly update. So for you folks that attended, thank you for Public Works staff and regional staff, Troutdale, Fairview, and Rockwood Water also were present. So thank you for taking the time out and joining us with that.
Well, thanks for putting it on and inviting all of our neighbors and giving them the opportunity for a get together.
Yeah, and to show off our wonderful city hall here.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it was nice after, you know, being shut down for 2 years. It was nice to see some new faces and see some old faces too. So it was nice.
Nice to have Cultivated Initiatives there too, for inviting them as well.
Yes, definitely.
And the food was wonderful also. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. In your report, as requested by City Council, is the Metro fatality report that we currently get from Multnomah County each month. This is presented at the AMUCTUC. AMUCTUC is East Multnomah County Transportation Committee. Acronyms. So again, just there's a copy of that in your report also. And then I go through kind of what our staff does. Hopefully you noticed this year, the median flowers on 238th, a little more robust than last year. You Cultivate Initiatives for making those plantings happen and working with them the last month and a half. And we're fine tuning some things, but you know, with the support from the city manager and our staff, working with Cultivate Initiatives, we're supporting their program and they're supporting us too. They're doing a wonderful job. We do have a minor water main leak on Holiday Place, and that is what the lower left-hand corner picture is. And we're working on getting a contractor in there to button that up.
So the check I signed today was to find the leak. And
It was to confirm, so that area of the city tends to have a lot of natural springs and water anyway. And so the question always was, because that's where a main actually dead ends. And so like, is it a spring? Is it the water main? And so that we did hire a locate company or not locate, leak detection company that specializes in manipulating the system to determine is or isn't it from the municipal water supply. And it was a B+ rating that it is, which means plus or minus 3 feet of their location that they marked, which is the end cap of the line. Essentially, the end cap seems to have failing around the edges.
Not a major leak, but it is a leak and we're working to get that repaired, getting some quotes. Moving on to building and permitting, went down in May a little bit, but that's going to ramp up with Jersey Mike's and
Joint chiropractic.
the joint chiropractic. Yes. Chick-fil-A and Chipotle is they're doing kind of their pre-application stuff, so to speak. They're working on their traffic impact analysis that they have to provide Multnomah County for Wood Village Boulevard, Gleason traffic impacts. And they've been working with our staff, mainly Jonathan, a little bit with Erica on their submittal for their design review.
And we do have a new full home refurbishment on Birch that is most welcome by a lot of the community members. So a lot of permits will be coming out of that too.
Yes. Code compliance. I know we were briefly talking about that, Counselor Nissen, earlier. is really ramping up. And I just want to take this time to thank Greg and Chief Hakala for working through some of the issues and how we're reporting. The chief is really working with how we're fine tuning that instead of having a city staff member on hold with non-emergency for an hour and a half to 2 hours. Chief really is stepping up and trying to refine that process.
Excellent.
Some of the development planning, like I said, Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, they're kind of in their pre-design process right now, working with staff, and can't wait to get the design hearing scheduled and break ground. And we did receive the 90% complete for the crossings on Halsey. So that is a good sign. And I think by the end of next week, we should have our internal review. We're reviewing it for completeness, and then that will move it from 90% to 100%. And then we'll get the bid documents and get an RFP out.
And then, I don't know if this is to you, John or Greg, that was for the first two, correct?
Three.
Three. And then we signed the MOU or the IGA with Multnomah County for a total of 6.
Yes.
Will we be able to take that design and just use it for the other 3? Or do we have to go back to them for the new, because they're in different locations?
So they're different locations. Each one's it's its own design and build because of the topography. Now, what we can do and explore is we saw how long it was for these. I mean, part of the idea was, okay, the county is going to maintain it. It's a county standard. It seemed to have made sense for them to do it. I think for the next set, we'll have a more discussion with the county. What's your realistic capacity to actually do this in a reasonable amount of time versus us going to like RH2 or on-call engineering service and just whipping it out in a month and then having the county review it instead of doing the full design work. So that was something we'll explore with the county in terms of the next set and next phase of these.
Okay, I was, hoping kind of just take a
No, it's
generic.
specific.
Okay.
Based on
Survey.
angles, elevations, topography, curb cut needs. Yeah, they're each, their own design.
Okay, thank you.
Standards are all the same, pretty consistent, but each location is, yeah. And like Greg said, we'll reach out to RH2, see what they can do and kind of that cost to time frame, kind of balance that out and go from there.
Okay.
Water consumption, 11 million gallons. Production, 13 million gallons. System loss is still right there above 10%, 13%. Again, maybe the holiday will getting that minor leak repaired will reduce that a little bit. Just want you to know too, all city irrigation is ready to go. So City Hall irrigation, ball field irrigation, center median irrigation, both north and south, ready to go. We're not going to spend money on flowers planted and not take care of them. So I think the weather is going to start changing here a little bit, start getting a little warmer. So and the baskets, flower baskets, hopefully you've driven Halsey and Wood Village Boulevard. Flower baskets are hung. We have an agreement in place for watering with City of Fairview. That is the May report. Any questions, Mayor, councilors?
The system loss staying in the double digits. Do we feel like the money that we authorized tonight for the SCADA improvements will help us get to the bottom of that? That it's maybe a reporting issue and not a loss issue?
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, there's the confidence in the numbers is squishy. And so again, as we look over the next hopefully this year, maybe year and a half, as we upgrade systems and remove the potential human error component, we have a better stake of what are those numbers? That was another impetus for upgrading the SCADA system is it's hard to tie stuff back to actually verify. Are these absolutely 100% correct or 99% correct? And between that and then the master plan works, we should be able to dial in what that's really looking like.
And actually getting an answer that you can comprehend instead of it's just an anomaly.
Absolutely.
No, I think it's going to be a good investment. I'm looking forward to next 12 to 24 months. master plans are still progressing. And, not this next fiscal, but the following, once we start getting into the capital improvements, spending some money, doing some major.
Great.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next up, Finance Director's report with Seth. Still no walk-up music.
Mayor, council, as soon as Em's replaced, I'll work with whoever replaces her to work on our audio visual presentations for our meeting. Take that up a notch. So you have the graphs, tables of graphs in your packet. I don't have any out on there, but I did want to give an update on two initiatives. The first is the business income tax. As you know, the third largest revenue source for the general fund, $300,000 this year. It's property taxes, franchise fees, business income tax. As you'll recall, 18 months ago, the county amended the ordinance and started charging a higher rate. 2022. I'm sorry, that was over 2 years ago. It was right before the pandemic that happened. And you'll recall that we 10 years, the county, so they send us this money because back in the 70s, 3 of the cities in East County had their own standalone business license tax. Those were abandoned, and we went with the county, ironically, to help businesses with streamlining the reporting and payment of those business license or business income taxes. So about every 10 years, the county forgets about that and thinks that, why are we giving all this money away? And so we tend to have to remind them of kind of the history of that and why that happened. So as you recall, one of the arguments that was made at the time is that we believe that over the last 30 years, more and more of the economic activity that's generated by that tax is actually coming from East County, whereas the services supporting East County haven't necessarily risen in line with the revenues that they're raising located here. We didn't have the data to prove it. We kind of backed into some of those numbers just based on population. But the county passed it. We got them to make sure that we weren't harmed by the changes, and we actually got a little bit more revenue. And also got some assurance from them that they would start Portland to start collecting the data that we would need to analyze to see kind of whether or not that's true. I've been emailing them periodically, seeing how that's going. We got an update back. And they are going to be looking at changing the reporting. They weren't just ignoring me, so they reassured it wasn't just that I had been pestering them. But the state made some changes about 4 or 5 years ago to how they collect business income tax at the state level, and really had to do with the idea was they wanted to not penalize companies that were headquartered here and did business elsewhere, count that income as generated in Oregon, and they wanted other companies that were service-based, large service-based companies that weren't headquartered here to have to pay a portion of what they earned within economic activity as part of business license or business income tax. So all that to say, the state changed their methodology. At the same time, Metro passed a similar tax interim. And so the Portland Business Alliance has been working with Metro and the state and the city of Portland to say, you guys are out of convergence in how you are asking us to report these things. Metro is looking at implementing one. We don't want to end up in a situation where we have 3 different agencies asking us to report our income, our business income 3 different ways. Can you guys please talk to each other and figure out a way for us to do this once to pay you? Which again, I say that ironically, that's the whole reason why back in the 70s, we ended up giving up our individuals and partnering with the county, because that was what we were hearing from the business community then. It's also what they're hearing now. So all of that to say, They are aware of it. They're trying to work with 3 governmental entities. And I said, that's fine. They're going to start meeting with on a regular basis because we don't want them to lose sight of the fact that we still want to gather data that we can then show contribution of East County and also have a conversation about service alignment. So I know that we had a lot of information that came at you 2 years ago. It's not that we haven't done anything. We've just been continuing to reach out to try and find out if we're actually making progress. And so the answer is yes, it's just been slow.
So the Portland Business Alliance, and Portland area businesses saying that the city of Portland's collection sort of metric doesn't match up with the state's new collection sort of metric. And they realize that that's not just that Portland just collects the funds, that the county is contracted with them to do the collection, and that Portland's collection metric is also our collection metric.
They're aware, and they've also, Portland's been doing some work to try and see. They have the ability to audit and methodologies that people are using. Discovered is that a lot of companies have just started doing it the way the state did it. Doing it once and not actually and so they're trying to, and the big concern with this was they wanted to make sure, Portland talked about, I think, making the change at the time. They were just unsure within the state whether or not it would negatively impact revenue, because really the only place in the state that charges these types of taxes is Portland metro area. So, and a lot of places are headquartered in Portland metro area, but do business in other parts of the state. So if they were allowed to discount that income, that actually adversely impact the revenue collections for the city of Portland and Multnomah. They're not sure. They think that based on the state's results, it's probably not, and trying to study it, figure it out. You want to end up simplifying and streamlining the process.
By inviting another government.
So that's the end of my update for this month.
Questions or comments for Seth at all? Thank you, Seth. Next up, city manager's report with Greg.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Just a quick update, a few things. Again, just want to touch on the current year's APP. There are 3 items I want to bring up that are just kind of, they've fallen behind or had issues come up with them. The first one is that municipal code update. You know, we brought in series of the potential revisions. You all signed off on them. The hang up was those revisions, as we learned, weren't done in track changes. They were all done manually with strikeouts or everything else, which makes it hard to make sure that it is 100% clean in what you all said you wanted to adopt. And so it's just taking more time to go through. We've chunked it out actually. And because M's leaving, you know, it's just.
You could blame it on me.
We just want to
Exactly.
make sure, since it's a comprehensive update, that when it's updated, we're not like, oh, there's this error. Oh, we forgot to include this, or this got inadvertently dropped. So it's just taking a little more time. The other piece is on the Bureau of Emergency Communication IGA. We had anticipated that actually coming before you actually kind of right now. But what happened, individuals in Multnomah County were newer to the process, had concerns that had been addressed years ago, but they need to get up to speed. I think that's the Cliff Notes version. It seems like it'll take a few more months to get that rolled out. It's certainly not on our hang up, but it seems like the version for cities is good. It's county wants to just do some additional reviews, have some questions.
So money that we're all conceivably going to spend that's in our approved budgets now. It's the property tax dollars, but they don't have to know how they're going to collect it or how much within the budget timeframe.
For the BIT or BOAC?
For BOAC.
BOAC is funded with 911 taxes, and then they pass actual costs based on their allocation. So until we get a new IGA, we are operating underneath the old one.
And then the last item is towards the bottom with that park sign and translation rollout. There's with other projects kind of being delayed or stretched out due to shipping delays, contractor delays, stuff that's just happened over the last year. This one's been pushed off a little bit, but we have been in talks of what those signs look like, where they should be, engage with the Parks Commission. And what we'll probably end up doing is kind of as we're doing the CDBG project, which got awarded from the community or the committee last month for 79,000. We'll probably tag team some of those signs and new additions with that project, as well as our own staff moving some signs around and changing the signage to recognize where City Hall and Civic Center are, where are some of the other park amenities, updating the aerials, for example. So we're in progress with those, including using more pictorial representations instead of verbiage. So that way it doesn't matter what language someone has or their comprehension has, they can get the basics through just pictorial. So still making progress on that, just a little more delayed than we would have liked. Questions on the APP?
At all?
On next year's APP, at your next meeting, we have it on the agenda for discussing some priorities and some shifting of things based on, some personnel revisions, personal things going on. And it seems like there's only really two big items that'll be pushed a little bit. One of them is that community engagement survey, probably more fall, winter time. And we'll have to take a look at what makes sense staging it so you're not conflicting with holidays and things like that as it gets rolled out. The other one is the more comprehensive update to the CI and LMGM zones. I'll probably pushed back since none of the properties in that area are pushing for those changes. That makes sense to kind of push off for a little bit. But we are in the final steps of doing that. I call it the quick fix, which was recognizing different commercial categories and adding back freight and warehousing. So we should see that one in the next month or two. So current planning efforts will go through. Just that next big comprehensive one, probably push back a little bit. Otherwise, it seems like we can actually keep rolling with a lot of initiatives and projects. Want to just again recognize this is M's last council meeting, probably last public meeting before she departs, and just want to on the record officially thank her for her service, her dedication, her and
Clap for her service, boo that she's leaving.
well, and I understand she prepared a 30-minute monologue on the history of Wood Village that since she loved presenting, she really felt she wanted to do that tonight.
Excellent.
The floor. Actually, we credit her with adding events to the consent calendar so she wouldn't have to present. And just lastly, and this probably will go into the next, the mayor and council comments, but just recognizing the tragedy that occurred this past Tuesday in Texas, the previous week in Buffalo. This is policy and politics aside, gun violence in our communities, our nation, it's tragic. Again, policies, all that aside, it's very tragic. And there's talks of trying to do some forums and again, giving assistance and help to those who are just clearly in dire straits of something and, what can be done to help individuals and just reduce violence in our communities. So that was my last item. Other questions going on in the city, concerns otherwise?
Jeff, do you have a city attorney's report?
I do not, Mr. Mayor, although we have enough time from my history in New and Oregon report. Sam's going to do hers and I could just follow on.
Follow on. Well, remember the last time you brought that up, I said there had to be a bottle of makers between us and we don't have that here, so. All right, so we'll move on then to mayor and council reports. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to go ahead and start. Greg and I did talk about the recent gun violence prior to the meeting. And I think in the next meeting, we'd like to have a moment of silence on the agenda, if that's okay with everyone, for both of those tragic incidences. And then I would like your permission to draft a condemnation letter for your approval, much like the one that we did for the action and for the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just think about it as violence in general, not strictly gun violence. There's a lot of other violence that happens that's not in the media or doesn't make the media as well on a daily basis that we need to, I'd like to think about included in there as well.
And then also just some changes to boards. I think I brought this up at the past meeting. Councilor Rios Campos and I are switching spots on the Main Streets on Halsey board. Councilor Rios Campos will be the main member and I will be the alternate. I have also resigned my position on the Main Streets, or excuse me, on the Play East board. And the way that IGA is currently constructed, I would need to be replaced with an elected member because we already have the public member. So really that's going to be up to Councilor Minor or Council President Nissen or Councilor Amend, because Councilor Rios Campos is the director of the program. And then next month is my last meeting representing the city on the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. Mine ends on June 30. And so we do need to look for a person to take on that role as well. Does anyone else have a report?
Main Streets on Halsey met last
night, yeah.
I think the consensus that the might take a pause for the summer. Staff reevaluate process and a couple things that the committee has to foresee. I think the big weight is the TGM grant. Not a whole lot happened there.
There's nothing else for the good of the order. We will go ahead and adjourn. Let's see here.
You guys didn't bring